Oh, what a lad. Well, it's not often you get a guest on who has a story so incredible that it's turned into a blockbuster movie. But today we have just the lad. He honestly has one of the most incredible footy careers, which saw him play all around the world on some of the biggest stages there is. None bigger than the 2011 Rugby World Cup, where he became the hero of a nation. And off the field, he is widely regarded as one of the greatest lads to ever play the game. It is the one and only Stephen Donald. Welcome, Beeve.
Thanks for having me, mate. Some intro. I don't know what that means as far as off the field, but I'll take it.
Mate, lots of questions came in for you. You sound like an absolute rooster.
No, I mean, we've all got a checkered past. Me knows more so than me. But, enjoyed my time, that's for sure.
Mate, and speaking about your time, like a lot of guys have up and down careers, but, mate, your roller coaster must have been some ride.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like at the end of it all now, I'm glad it was. It would have been nice to have had one of those beautiful plain sailing careers and everything was rosy. But I think, sort of person I was, I don't think it was ever going to be like that, and had to scrap for a fair bit of it. So, I mean, obviously it was some ride, and look back and think, geez, how did it all unfold like that at times?
Yeah.
And then, there was some dark days, and there's some obviously the highest of highs. But I guess over the whole thing, it was a bizarre sort of 15 or whatever years it was, and just in the end, just loved every minute of it. But at the time, when you're deep in some of those darker days, it was tough.
Yeah, and you've done a seamless transition post footy. Look at you now on the Sens radio every afternoon, one of the great shows. How have you found that? How have you found being on the radio?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I guess my relationship with the media in my playing career probably wasn't the greatest. So to now be, a media person is a bit different. But no, I've enjoyed it. I'm on with Kerr Stanway every day, so she's a proper professional, and I just come in with my shit chat along the side of it. But she keeps the thing going. But, I mean, I've been lucky, as you say, talk about life after footy. Then it's a pretty nice one to swing into. I was starting to think, what is around the corner and what is going to unfold. Like, I guess so many of us do, mate. We stress a little bit once, that sort of the last Japanese paycheck has been banked. And,
they were big paychecks too.
Start to wonder where we go to now. But, I guess it came at a nice time. Obviously, on the back of the COVID stuff, it was nice to swing into this one.
So she obviously does all the prep for the shows and all that, and sort of just gives you the rundown when you arrive.
Oh, look, she'll tell you that. I mean, I do arrive a good hour or so before kick-off, she's got everything covered in case it all goes flat. So, which sometimes does. So it's good.
But you must be flat out because you've also got Grins business, Unreal Drink, which has taken over the RTD space in New Zealand at the moment. Mate, how have you found that, and how did that one start?
Yeah, I mean, it has been, time at the moment is a bit precious. The days of being able to go fishing and golfing, I've got to manufacture those again now. But Grins thing's been hectic. It started off, as everything does, sort of a couple of conversations that you think won't really eventuate. As you know, footy players, we talk a lot of rubbish at times, and nothing usually gets action. But we decided to go on one of these sort of chats and dug a little deeper and got into it and got to the point where we're too far in now to turn back. And it's been awesome. It's been all encompassing, that's for sure. I guess it's just been life for the last sort of 7 or 8 months, really. It's been pretty hectic, but it's been good fun, and to do it with some good boys who have some very interesting business ideas at times. The two of those, it's been good.
Yeah, how have they been? Did they have much input into the whole setup of it, and what's their role now in terms of what they do?
We're very much in charge of the departments. They're in charge of obviously social media. Certainly wouldn't allow Anton in charge of budgeting or anything like that. would already be under if he had his way.
He'd blow it on the punt.
Oh, blow it on the punt, blow it on, I call him Santa Claus because he just thinks we can give away everything. No, they've been brilliant. Like, obviously, all along said to them, boys, you know, it's what you can do is what you can do. You know, like, your bread and butter is your footy, and you got to make that's your job at the moment. So flying to that, and I'll do ring in the background, and you boys help out where you can. So they've been great. They've been, Damien's obviously in Japan, and you know what it's like when you're in a Japanese apartment. You've got a bit of time on your hands. So I'm going to hear from him more now than I probably will in the coming years, because once he's back here, he'll have his golf course again. So, but at the moment, he's got plenty of ideas. And the thing for all of us is we're in a world now that we're literally learning as we go.
Yeah.
And the good thing is, I think we're going down it with eyes wide open, and you know, every day you're like, oh, that's interesting. You know, it's probably common sense to people who have been in it for years.
Yeah.
But for us, every day we're like, oh, okay, that's good to know. So yeah, they've been great, and it's who knows where it's going to end up, but it's good fun. Yeah.
So have you got a plan going forward with it? Do you have a dream, or where do you see it in sort of 5 years' time?
Oh man, I mean, I've got to tell you, I've got a business plan, or else, you know, we look like idiots if we don't. But,
sell the dream.
Sell the dream. It's very fluid, and I mean, you know, Anton's big on playing what he sees, so I guess Grins will play what they see in a lot of regards too. But you know, we've got, I guess we map out. We've recently sort of mapped out what we think the next year might look like, and then beyond that. So, I mean, in 5 years' time, if we're still around, it means we've been successful and we're still trucking. So I guess it's a bit like your footy career, you know. If people want to say, you know, what's your 5 year dream? Well, if we're still around in 5 years, then I'm going all right, sort of thing. So I guess that's what we're thinking as far as the with the Grins, and hopefully we're not as wet behind the ears in 5 years' time as we have been in the last 6 months.
But I guess what helps is that it goes good. It tastes bloody good. Everyone raves about it.
Yeah, it would have been starting off, you know, when you talk to people in the industry and around the place, so marketing's a big thing, and, you know, obviously you guys are going to be able to get a leg up with the profile of Anton and Damien, but at the end of the day, we could have marketed it for a month or two, but if it tastes like rubbish, you ain't going to go buy another one just because the boys' faces are there. So it was funny though, mate, to be fair. We tasted it, we did the sampling in that months and months before it actually eventually went to stock, or went to stores, and the other boys were gone, so it was just me and Sam went to the factory at 5 o'clock in the morning before the first run, and they said, oh, you can come at 5 o'clock in the morning before we hit the go button on your thousands and tens of thousands of cans, and just have one last sample. And it was the most nervous drink I've ever had in my life, thinking, geez, I hope we got this flavour right. And luckily, I mean, I'm not the target market anyway, but I was like, no, that'll do us, and Lash was happy with it too. So we were up and running. But I can tell you, mate, there were two very nervous men sitting in a manufacturing warehouse at 5 o'clock in the morning a few months ago, thinking, have we done the right thing here?
So are you an RTD man, or are you still a classic beer man?
Oh, look, I probably, up until probably 4 months ago, I reckon I could have counted on one hand how many RTDs I've drunk in my life. As a youngster growing up, had a crack on KGBs and Purple Guanas in the parties around Waikato, but woke up in the morning and I thought my teeth were going to fall out, so I stayed away from them. And then obviously being a Waikato draft man, I didn't have too much option for the last 15 years, but in the last 3 months, I reckon I can probably count on one hand how many beers I've had, and I've just spent all that on. And you know, it's funny, like, obviously your mates will get involved in it because they want to, you know, support their mate. But I've got mates now who I never thought I would ever see with a yellow or an orange can in their hand, and it's what they buy. So you know, I think it's more socially acceptable now for us Kiwi blokes, I think, to be holding an RTD in our hands. I mean, I know the young generation of Damien and Anton's things don't even think twice about holding an RTD, but for us older ones, mate, it's been a bit of a shift.
Well, I guess you're changing that stigma because you are known as one of the manliest men around. So seeing you hold one, I guess it makes it acceptable for everyone.
Look, if that's what it takes, mate, please, I'll hold as many as I need to.
Oh, mate, but exciting times ahead for Grins. But we do have a hell of a journey to get through. Yours is one of the greats. So I do want to start at the start as a young baby beaver. What was that like?
Just like, I guess, every sort of other Kiwi kid, growing up in, not the big cities, just ripping into everything and played every sport going. Put a fair bit of time in that into tennis. Played all the regional stuff and the national stuff with that. And then sort of got to the age about 14, 15, realised I wasn't going to win Wimbledon. So started to park that idea. And
what held you back? What held you back?
I reckon, a few things. A backhand would have been helpful. You need more than a first serve and a wayward forehand to make it to Wimbledon. But and to be fair, sort of, and it's funny when you think about it because obviously you shouldn't be making your sporting career as a 10-year-old, but sort of 10 or 11, you're sort of competing with everyone. And then everyone at that age, I guess, in the big smoke, just from that age was just 12 months a year tennis. And I would just park it for 6 months, play club footy, like your junior boys footy, and then come back to it when it was time to try and make the nationals and qualify for the teams events and stuff like that. And by the time I was 12, you're almost out the rear. So it just became a time thing. And as I say, a lack of a backhand probably was also very significant in that.
And is that when rugby took over?
No, I wouldn't say took over. You run had the dream of being an All Black, but I still played every other sport going then, got into cricket then, started playing a little bit of rep cricket and stuff, and then flagged that when I was playing cricket on Saturday, then play rep on the Sunday, and then get a duck on a Sunday and work out why have I just given up my entire weekend for this. It's got to be a bit away. So, no, I think the rugby obviously always had the dream, and then sort of when I got to about 15 or 16, started to do I remember getting given I think ACC used to put out a training program, and I just remember getting this, and it was just a generic one, and I remember getting this, and I went a bit compulsive and on it one summer. And I went from being an absolute slug to someone with a little bit of toe. And all of a sudden, the following year, sort of 16, 17, rugby became a little bit, I guess, in your local area, it became a little bit easier and started making the rep team, pretty comfortably and stuff. And then it was like, oh, okay. And then sort of, I guess, then making the decision to then go to Wesley really, I guess, kick-started it all really properly.
Yeah. How hard was that move?
Yeah, massively hard. Obviously, a Waikato boy through, and Wesley, although at the time were probably the undisputed kings of secondary school rugby in New Zealand, didn't really have any thought of ever going there. Jerome and Johnny Afawa and Joe Rocks, who were all counties boys before they signed the big checks to go to St. Kitts, they had always sort of talked to their people at St. Kitts and tried to get me up there. And then in my 7th form year, I was like, you know what, maybe it is time to investigate this a bit further. So went up there, talked to them. The scholarships and all that were going to be sorted. But then they sort of said, oh, look, because there's so many imports now in our school, you're probably going to start out at 2nd 15 and all this sort of thing. And then Counties got a hold of me and said, and Counties hadn't really shown a whole lot of love apart from just your normal age group stuff. And they said, oh, we'll just consider going to Wesley and staying around Counties. And I was like, it's a bit left field. But in the end, my old man teaches at Waikato College, which made it even tougher. He was all for it. But he obviously, it was difficult. But the funniest thing was the year before we'd played them, and we had been quite a fire encounter, and at one stage I got on the bottom of a ruck and it turned into an all-in, including the sideline, and I was the target of it. And then I was turned around on day one, and then a couple of the Fijian boys, and obviously when I got Wesley, Sidamini sort of instantly became best mate.
Oh, yeah.
And I could sense there was a yarn just floating around this crew, because the Fijians always hung together and I'd always hang with them. And then about a week into it, City just brought it up and said, those two there, they beat you up last year. And because I couldn't remember who it was. But so, yeah, once I got past that, and I love my time there.
Yeah.
And it kick-started everything, really, as far as all of a sudden counties pulled me out of class one day and said, you're playing this weekend for counties. Show up to training on Thursday, sort of thing. So that was, I guess, from my childhood, I know it's sort of your teenage years, that was probably the thing that really kick-started everything. And I've got to be forever grateful of the time there.
Mate, that's crazy that counties called you out of your classroom. So did you expect that? Had you been training with them at all, or where did this come from?
No, as soon as I got to Wesley, I ended up getting a stress fracture in my back, because I had no idea about doing weights, but I thought, I better start doing weights. And they had a gym there, but none of the other boys needed to use them. So I just went in there in my lunchtime and started. I mean, I'm not the most coordinated thing anyway, but me doing weights as a 16 or 17-year-old, no wonder I got stress fractures. And so, no, I didn't even play the first part of the year. And then I was literally walking between classes and I heard my name over the loudspeaker, report to the principal's office. And the county's officials are in there and they said, look, we talked to your dad this morning. We've cleared it with him. If you're keen, come to training and you're away. And I was nowhere near. I shouldn't have been there. County was still first division at the time. And I ended up sitting on the bench for about 4 or 5 games that year.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. Like, I'd literally get told, I was never there other than a Thursday afternoon training, their final training run. And they'd say, come on in. And, okay, yep, we're playing Auckland, we're playing Waikato this week, you're on the bench. And I'm like, well, I've got no idea what's going on here. I'm literally 60 kgs dripping wet here. And that's when the All Blacks all played NPC. So you can imagine being a 17-year-old, you're just like, oh, Jesus.
Yeah. What were the guys like when you went into the environment? Were they all welcoming, or were they pretty tough work for a young school kid?
It was still about like proper old school era. But I was lucky there was a couple of guys from Waikato in there. And there was, because I was at Wesley, there was a couple of Wesley guys in there. Oh, yeah. So you sort of had a bit of a cushioning. Yeah, I mean, no, to be fair, they were probably pretty good. It was probably a more welcoming area or welcoming team than maybe if you'd gone into one of the big guns. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, when you look back now, it's like, geez, what was up? What was going on?
And how did you go? How did you go on the field when you got a crack?
I remember my first game, Bay Plenty dropped the first pass I got, so that was good.
Good confidence booster.
Good confidence booster. Trugged off the field thinking, well, that was my one and only game for counties. But I had one decent sort of cameo. Lockie Crichton went down after about 30 minutes against Canterbury at Pookie Stadium, and this is the day after we just won the top 32 final for Wesley, and they said, they rang me up after the game from the change room there, said, tomorrow can you come in and play for us? I hadn't heard from them for a couple of weeks. And so I'm sitting on the bench there, and then Lockie's going down, and I was like, oh, no. And this is when Canterbury had about 17 current All Blacks, and I was like, oh, no, Lockie, shake it off, please, shake it off. But he went off, and I'm out there, and I'm thinking, geez, I'm going to play 50 minutes here or whatever it was, and started to enjoy it, and a few things started to go my way, and then thankfully Lockie had got a jab. That's when jabs under the shed were all go, and he got one and came back out. He was very good to me, Lockie. I think he knew there was a 17-year-old out of his depth out there, but he needed to save.
Oh, that's good stuff. And I vividly remember actually ball-boying you. It must have been the following year when you were playing against Nelson Bays.
Yes.
You must have been really young. Obviously, you were your year out of school, but I must have been quite an old ball boy too, now that I think about it. I vividly remember handing you the tee and you acknowledging me. Like, not many guys would acknowledge you when you give them the tee, but you made an effort and changed my life.
Yeah, those second division rock stars, mate, they didn't always say thank you.
But what was it like going down to that competition? You probably felt more in your skill level, I guess.
Yeah, no, and it was good because, like, and it's interesting about where New Zealand Rugby's at now, like whether you'd still do that sort of thing. But like I had 2 years down there, and I still think that was more beneficial for me than going and playing Colts or whatever it was in one of the big unions, because you're playing grown men. You're playing for a team that if you play poorly if you walk down the street after a game, you'll hear about it still. So it's a bit of a hardening up process in that regard. It's like people care about the success of, for that instance, counties or whatever. And like back then, Nelson, Hawke's Bay were on another level to most. So there was sort of Hawke's Bay, and then there was Nelson, Bays, us, Manawatu, all sort of scrapping around that second sort of posse area. And it was good footy. Like I used to love coming down there on the hard track, and it was good fun footy. And we had Sidovini obviously in our team, so I'd just throw a cut out to him, and we'll just hope for the best, really.
So then why the move to Waikato?
Oh, well, back then bases, the super bases were at NPC level, were the base of the franchise. And it was, I don't think I'm giving away any great secret that if you played for an NPC team in one of those bases, the odds are you were going to get picked for the super team. So I'm glad to see where it's at now. Like, you can literally, as you say, you can play for Lamarca, or you can play for counties, and you can be anywhere. But back then, it was just a way that NPC teams could recruit for their, super teams could recruit for the NPC teams. And it was corrupt. But that's the way it was. So I knew I had to get to a base to get to super, and it pretty much came down to Waikato or Otago. And Otago had been knocking on the door for probably since the moment finished school at Wesley, so did Waikato. But Otago had sort of winked the nudge and said, "Oh, look, if you come down, you'll get super probably a year earlier." But I stubbornly said, "Oh, well, pick me and I'll come down." And they went another way, so I never went in the end. But in the end, Waikato was, at the time, it was more of a case of, I'm still pretty green little boy, and it's only an hour and a half from home. And Hamilton seemed like a massive city to me anyway, or any city in New Zealand seemed like a massive city to me. So it was just a nice sort of safe option, I think. And I think, Dad obviously had a fair bit of, thought about it all, and he just thought, there's probably a quicker route to being the starting 10, there than a few of the other places. And they sort of had David Hill at the time, and Glenn Jackson had moved on to Bay of Plenty and then off to overseas. So that was going to be the quicker route we sort of thought about. And in the end, it worked out. And it was a massive part of my life being a Mulu man. Yeah.
And how was it? How was living in Hamilton? How was playing for Waikato?
Yeah, I remember my first week down there was O week, and I remember vividly being in the outback at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was a Monday or Tuesday, and just looking at myself saying, what am I doing? Where am I? Where can I be at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Monday? Like, I'm coming from somewhere where you just Friday and Saturdays are your only options. But I was just getting caught in the bright lights of the Tron from day one. But then, once I got settled in and got into my routine, again, living with Sidovini, which was, again, a great experience for me and my old schoolmate. We lived the first couple of years together. So, Hamilton, I love Hamilton. I know a lot of people who've never experienced Hamilton have no time for it, but I think it's a great city, and the people there were always wonderful to me, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, what was Sidovini like to live with?
Look, well, what can I say? There wasn't a whole lot of in Waikato's smartness, I guess, they employed a cleaner, and who I think was only supposed to come once every fortnight. She ended up coming, I think, twice weekly. There was, I remember Glenn Ross, who was in charge of us at the time, he came to us and said, "Boys, we've got an issue." I was like, "What?" He goes, "Oh, we've got a $3,000 heating bill for you." and that was more than what I was on from Waikato. So, and Rossi knew this, so I looked at Ross and go, well, he's got Super Rugby already. I've got no money. I'm not paying a 3,000. But City obviously couldn't. It was like an incubator. Our house, every heater in the room was on, and it was just it was a sauna and a messy sauna at that. But I mean, me and City go back a long way, so it was apart from all that, it was great times.
Yeah.
And then he quickly earned a lot of money, so he ended up buying his own mansion. So I caught up with some of my mates from back home and started flatting with them over in Hillcrest. So yeah.
And on the field, how was it on the field? Obviously, that's when the famous Stephen Donald show and go was introduced to New Zealand. Every second carry, one of the great show and goes.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. Like my first year of Waikato, John Mitchell was our head coach.
Oh yeah,
and he had literally just come from the year before being the All Black coach. And so, like, it was just like you were just in the days. Every day you went to training, and like Mitch brought the same organisation and the same, I guess, trimmings around the team that you would expect the All Blacks to have, and like the computer work and how he structures week and all the themings. And I was just like, I'd come from second division counties, and I was just thinking, sheepers, what have I walked into here? And it was so good. And he'd spend hours with you and go into depth, like the likes of which you have never seen before. I think he probably made his own sort of computer analysing program. He was that engrossed in it. So, sure. and that was great for me. And then following on from that, got Super Rugby. They got a few starts for Waikato and MC that year, and I think we bowed out in the semi in Wellington, I think. But yeah, it was a great time. And then to get the Super on the back of that, when I knew I was on the cusp of it, but back then it was only 26 players get the contract. So there was still a real nervous wait for, I think they used to have that draft day in October at the end of the NBC, and just sitting by your phone thinking, is this the year? Because I'd been through it the last couple of years of being in the pool, but obviously never getting picked. So that was an experience to wait for finally get the go ahead with the Chiefs. And then obviously just goes again as far as the professionalism and everything from there. So those early years, it's almost like you're just in the days anyway. You're just a kid still, and you just what it's like. You just got to be at training at 8 o'clock, and you're just following the path from there.
And how did you find out that you got drafted? How did that thing work?
Well, it's funny. The previous years when I was so-called in contention for the Chiefs and these other places, I got rung by the assistant coach or the manager or whatever. But the year that they picked me, Fozzie rung me up and said, "Oh, we're going to take you this year, Steve." So I was like, that's good, mate. And then I remember, because I was about to go play touch-up home and have a bit of a Thursday night, and he said, "Oh, you got to be down here at 9 o'clock tomorrow for a press conference." Like, yeah, I'll be there, but I don't know what shape I'll be in, Foz, but I'll be there.
And what memories stand out for you from your Chiefs days?
I guess the group that we had, to be fair, and we were inconsistent as buggery, especially for a lot of those early years, and just it's not like we tried to, but you could almost put a clock to it that would lose our first 3 or 4 games, and then we'd just catch a light, and we would almost be unbeatable for the rest of it. But when you're playing Super 12, sometimes the playoffs are even gone, and you couldn't make it even if you won your last 7 or 8, because we'd already dropped our first 3 or 4. And so I just remember the days of once we finally caught a light, it was just so easy playing with your Luakis and your loose forwards for me, because we just had a pretty simple game plan. We'd get over the advantage line out wide with a City or something like that, and then you'd just come back into the midfield, and then you'd have Luaki rolling on, and we'd just play off the back of that.
Yeah.
And that was pretty cool. And obviously in 2009 we went all the way to the final, and then just had an absolute disaster in Pretoria. But again, at the start you talked about the ride and all the rest of it. Playing a final in Pretoria, it would have been great to have won it, don't get me wrong, but experiencing playing the Blue Bulls at Loftus, the final, is something else. Anyone that's played them would know when they were rocking and rolling, and they had the whole Springbok team pretty much. It was an experience like nothing else. From the moment you leave your hotel to the moment you get out there, it's quite incredible. So those were probably it. And then I guess the second stint coming back, I don't know what I was walking into. I don't know how much fun it would be, but it was. I'm just so glad that I ended up taking the punt on that and doing it.
Yeah.
And just I guess coming back and knowing that you're going to be a contender every year because that's what they built under Rennes was pretty special. And then obviously the group there was a fairly decent group of guys, but also footballers as well. So I mean, the Chiefs for me it's just always been just awesome buggers to hang out with, and guys that are going to front. And you know, some years it works out better than others, but just a special time in our lives again.
Yeah, good time. So going back to your first stint with the Chiefs, your form was obviously good enough to get you a call into the All Blacks. Was that expected when that came, or how did that one come about?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess after a couple of years there, I started to think it must have been knocking on the door. And the year before I actually got picked, I went down to a training camp that they tried to keep under wraps before the World Cup, the 07 World Cup. And they, I remember looking around and I was the only one there because DC was still over with the Crusaders. They were still making their way back from Africa. Oh, yeah. And Millsy, my great mate, who was obviously a senior pro at the time, he was like, "Oh, you're in. You're going to be an All Black. You're going to be an All Black." And I was like, just shut up. And then went down there for this one-day training camp in Wellington. I think I butchered every one of Smithy's Y-line drills. So I don't know if I cost my World Cup selection then and there, but I probably couldn't have found it. And then they said, they told us after, if you get a phone call tonight, it's not good news, but if not, it's all go tomorrow morning sort of thing. And Millsy knew I was in an absolute jittering mess. So he took me out for dinner, and it started to get to about 9:30, and I'm like, wow, Ted would be in bed by now. Surely I'd have been called by now. Is this good news or what? But unfortunately, sitting in a Japanese restaurant, Ted gave me a dreaded call to say I wasn't going to be picked. So, yes, that was. I guess that's what probably all of a sudden gave me thought that it could happen.
Yeah.
Getting that close, obviously it was heartbreak, but in retrospect, there's no way I was going to be ready for that. The 07 World Cup quarter final. If I'd been thrown out there, I knew I'd have been a man to the sport, I think. But I think, the following year, obviously, it was very much in your thought process that this is what I'm working toward, and I must be pretty close after the previous year. And then, again, there was a training camp at the end of Super Rugby. And again, you're not trying to get too excited because I've been down this route before, but then they listening to the radio one Sunday morning. Ted didn't read it out, but someone read it out and it was in there.
Crazy. And did you feel good enough once you were named and once you're in that environment? Did you feel ready to be an All Black?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you feel when you're looking around and, you think, well, obviously DC aside, then you think, yep, I deserve to be here. But I guess because it's all you've ever wanted and that it took I don't know when I ever felt comfortable in there or if I ever did, it was probably so surreal to me that it'd been your dream all those years that, as soon as you get in there, they talk about, be a great All Black, blah, blah, blah. And then you're thinking, well, hang on. No, you got Murdens and Spencer and Fox and all that. When you were growing up, they were great All Blacks. I'm nowhere near it. So it just, funny things like that, I remember sticking your head. And it took, I reckon, I didn't really think I was an All Black until we played the Tri-Nations. It ended up being a Tri-Nations and Bledisloe decider in Brisbane. And they crazily took Mar off with about 20 to go when we were down by about 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And they chucked me out there. And I remember them pulling Mar off and said, beat you up. And I was saying, what, me for Mar? We need points. What are you bringing me on for? But they bumped Desi out and we got the result in the end. And I think that was 8 or 9 games into, I guess, the career of playing for the All Blacks. And it was that night, sitting back at hotels, when I actually felt like an All Black because the rest of them were all sort of those cameos when the job was done, and you know, like, yeah, it was nice to be capped and all the rest of it, but it was 10 minutes on the field when we were already up by 15 or what have you. So I guess that was the night that for me it was almost like my debut, where I actually felt like a genuine All Black, and it contributed to, I guess, a tough situation.
And I feel like not many people got the public scrutiny that you did throughout your career. And did you feel like that even at this stage when you were playing well and you were just come into the All Blacks?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I did. And like, I tried to block myself off from it, but I guess there was that constant feeling of, like, a lot of the times I was like, are you kidding me? Like, you know, I thought I'd played well enough in Super for, you know, a few years, and whenever it was NPC time, you'd go back and play well there. But yeah, it was constant, almost having to prove myself that, yeah, I am the second best 10 in this country. And yeah, it did get a little bit frustrating after a while, but I guess it helped me in a lot of ways, because it, I guess, constantly added a chip to my shoulder and trying to prove people wrong. But at times it would have been good to have been able to focus your energy elsewhere. But yeah.
But then it all spiraled even worse out of after that Hong Kong game. Obviously, lots been talked about that. But how did you feel after that night?
Yeah, I mean, I walked off the field knowing that I'd played poorly, and, you know, made a couple of just really annoying, because it just come back in the NPC, had 4 or 5 good weeks there, and was feeling in a real good space, and we'd had an internal game, and that went real well, and just getting up to Hong Kong, 20 minutes to go, I mean, they chucked me out there and just made a real few poor decisions, and then at the end of the day, missed the goal kick that could have probably smothered over a few of the decisions that I made. The goal kick that you'd usually bank on getting sort of 14, 15 in from touch, 20 odd out. You nail that and the game's buried. Yeah. Puts us out for 8 points as opposed to 5. And all the other stuff would have just become sort of quickly forgotten about. But unfortunately missed that, and then missed the touch, and then all of a sudden, you know, O'Connor kicks it from the sideline, and just, yeah, it was just a brutal part of the job. And, you know, like, I didn't, because you can lock yourself away when you're touring, and, you know, social media was a thing then, but it wasn't massive, so I wasn't on it, and I didn't need to be on it. And then all of a sudden I was getting messages from my mates back home who weren't rugby mates, they were just mates from back home, and they were saying, hang in there, boys, sort of thing. And you're like, you would never text me back. What's going on? And that's when I was like starting to think, geez, what's been I know I've played poorly and we've lost the test and all the rest of it, but obviously that sort of was an introduction to what the aftermath was going to be. And then once I got back to New Zealand, it just continued, and over summer it continued, and then all through Super, whenever we weren't playing at Hamilton, it just continued, and it just wore, I guess in the end it wore me down a fair bit, and probably had a fair bit in the decision to sign with Bath, you know, because I mean, I'd never dreamed of going overseas and playing rugby to make money. I just dreamed of being an All Black, so I was never going to walk away from that if I thought it was still a possibility. But the way it was unfolding and the news I was sort of starting to get filtered back from the top, I sort of knew that the All Black days were done. So that's the only reason in the end I signed with Bath. Yeah.
So how hard was it? Was it when you were going out, or like, could you go out in public, or were you just constantly copping it?
Yeah, constantly. Like, I pretty much wouldn't go out. If I went out, I'd go out in a mind that I wouldn't actually be able to remember what you told me. So that's not a good state to be going out in. Yeah. But that was probably only a couple of times during Super Rugby when I sort of needed a blowout. And then, yes, going to the supermarket and stuff like that was, I guess, at night time with your hoodie on, sort of thing. It was just very much from house to training to home, and just sort of truck through it, because it was just getting to a point where it's like you couldn't avoid it. So it was a funny old time, but yeah, I mean, now you look back and you sort of go, oh, again, I was glad it happened, but yeah, at the time it was a fairly dark sort of 8 or 9 months.
Mate, that's crazy. So when the World Cup squad was selected, you were never expecting to make it?
No, Ted had rung me up probably a few weeks beforehand. And he's, you know, I can't remember too much what he said, because in those conversations, as soon as you've heard what you've not wanting to hear, you've switched off, and it's probably more for their benefit than anything. So I think he just said something like, you're not going to be there, all the best in Bath. Thanks for the last few years, sort of thing. So no, I was well out of the picture. Never got told that, you're this in line, you're this in line. It was, just enjoy Bath and be on your way, pretty much.
And what point did you start thinking, hang on, I might be getting called in here?
Well, no, Kahui, he messaged me after, yes, the one and only. He messaged me after DC's groin, and he goes, "Get ready, boy, get ready." And I remember where I was when he was ringing, and I was like, "No, mate," because they'd actually taken Cruds to a training camp. So, and Cruds, had a good NPC too, so there was no reason to think that they'd changed their thinking there. So, obviously, about a day later, after Kahui tried to tell me I was coming in, they'd already got Cruds in there. So, no, and to be honest with you, because Pity had been doing a lot of the goal kicking and things like that, and he had sort of taken a more senior role in it all. I remember watching the quarter final. I think it was probably the first All Black game I've actually watched when Slade went down.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm under no illusions that I haven't been told anything. So I don't have any great hope there. So just jumped. I'd already had planned to go White Bay the next day, and I was already having to get up at sort of Sparrows. So I was like, well, I'm still going because I'm under no reason to think any otherwise. And I told Kahui, "Don't you bloody ring me carrying on like this." And then he's texting me that night saying, "No. Shags just talked to me. What are you up to?" And I said, "I still don't take this as anything other than your rubbish chat." So then, and obviously, as the story goes, it wasn't until late that next afternoon after we got off the river that I had even thought that it was going to happen.
True. That's crazy. And then how quickly did you have to be in the squad?
The next day, because they played the day before, so they'd given everyone a day off, and then they weren't training bugger all anyway by that stage.
Yeah.
Because they were so beaten up. So I remember I had Grandma's birthday that night. So I had Grandma's birthday, and then because I was carless, because the All Blacks had taken my car off me, I'd actually had Kahui's car for the previous 6 months. And he said, "Oh, come back," because I was up home in Waikato. He said, "Come back to Hamilton and we'll drive up tomorrow together." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's a good idea." So I went back to Hamilton, came back with Cucks, and a bit nervous, obviously. We stop at the Huntly, I think it's a Shell station there at Huntly, and he goes and puts petrol in the diesel ute. So we end up being about 2 hours late from when I was supposed to be in there because we're waiting for a ute to get pumped out. So, but my sweaty palms have just gone absolutely berserk waiting to get to the hotel now, and it's got even more awkward showing up late to my first day back in there when, they probably didn't bank on having to call me up anyway. It just made it a wee bit more awkward.
Oh, man, that's crazy. And how did you feel? Had you been doing any training? Did you feel ready to give it a crack, or were you a little bit over it,
Oh, I was. It's funny because some people say, "Oh, did you ever think about saying no?" I was like, "Well, no, I was never going to say no." It's what you'd always craved. But as far as conditioning goes, we'd finished the NPC about 7 weeks earlier. We'd lost the final, and I had in my mind that I was going to be missing everything about New Zealand for 2-3 years. Was my contract at Bath, so I was just going to try and pack everything into that six weeks. So I had a heavy 6 weeks. And I remember Cucks telling me, he goes, "You should start doing some training for Bath." And my motivation for Bath at the time was about that. So I was like, "Mate, it's a guaranteed contract. Who cares what shape I show up in?" So, no, I showed up in some pretty rough shape to the All Black environment, to be fair. I remember going to see Nick Gill, the trainer at the time, and obviously worked with the Chiefs. I said, "Mate, I'm not in great shape. what can I do? And he goes, no, you'll be all right. You got a good engine. Just do a bit of sharpening work during the week if you want. So, yeah. I mean, you pride yourself on your fitness all your career, and then the most famous game you're playing, you're completely overweight. People telling you how fat you were. So it was a bit of a kick in the guts, but anyway.
Mate, that's so good. It's so good. So did you still feel confident in your skill set and stuff to be playing in a World Cup final?
Yeah, I guess you don't really think about it, but yeah, the good thing about going into the camp is, because I guess when you think you're never going to be an All Black again, you have a few sleepless nights thinking, where did I let this all slip?
Yeah.
And I had plenty of those nights from Hong Kong onwards, and a lot of it was around, like, I would play a certain way for the Waikato and Chiefs, which was very simplistic. But then when I'd go into the All Blacks, I'd complicate things and try and do stuff, like DC, for example, had the greatest kicking game I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And yet I'd go in there, and obviously the All Blacks had these kicking calls for that kick. And I'm like, okay, I've got to produce that too, do I? And, you'd beat yourself to the pulp trying to train and get it there. But, like, as we all know, I'm not the most fluid and gifted sort of athlete in that regard, but he could just drop it on a 5-cent piece. So yeah. I guess the good thing about all of that experience was when I got called back in, I was like, right, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do this, this, and that. And that's all I'm going to do. And, that was probably the thing that held me in good mindset for, having not touched a footy for about 6 weeks. Yeah. The fact that I wasn't going to go in there and try and change the world was good. And to be fair, the coaches were actually, and it's probably the first time the coaches were similar on that. They're like, right, just do, what are your 2 good kicks? And I was like, long, high. And those were going to be my 2 kicks going into the games. So, just stuff like that. I think, in hindsight, I wish I'd done that from day dot in the All Blacks, but might not have had to go through all the other stuff. But yeah, it was a good way to probably go in there, just to keep it simple. I've got these 2 kicks. I'll run hard if there's a dummy, if there's a chance to dummy, show and go, and otherwise I'm just going to pass a bit.
Nice. And when you got the call on the bench, how was the heart?
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking, Cruds will walk this off surely, and then all of a sudden, no. Because there's that moment that he got up, and I was looking at the big screen, and looked like he was going to shake it off, and then he stands up, and then the medico sort of let him stand on his own 2 feet, and then he sort of just collapses on that knee. I'm like, rightio, we're into it now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the heart was going, but at the end of the day, for 10 months after Hong Kong, it was the moment you never thought you were going to get again. So it was just something that you were that, I guess, as I said, there was a chip on your shoulder, and you were that sort of focused on taking full advantage. Like a lot of stuff had been said and carried on about me in that 10 months. So I had 40 or 50 minutes to try and wash that all away, really.
Yeah, and when that penalty went, they point to the post, mate. I loved how confidently you strode up to the spot with the kicking tee. Were you feeling that confident?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones that it was actually probably pretty fortunate that's one that in my routine, my general training routine, that's one of the ones I always sort of have in my session.
Yeah.
And so, you put that over a million times, and, I knew, like it should be bread and butter. And, at the time I wasn't thinking that this could change everything, which if I had it probably would have shanked and then come off the spin. But, it was just a kick that had to go over. So it was good. I had Mick Byrne on the tee, who was always a good sounding board for me around my kicking stuff anyway.
Yeah.
And I told him before the game, look, because whenever I got myself into trouble as far as goal kicking wise, it was always if I sped things up, and speeding things up, like you set up your routine and everything. Mm. So I just said to Mick, I said, mate, if you bring a tee up to me, just tell me to be slow. Mm. And it probably still wasn't that slow, because the heart was probably going 100 miles an hour, but at least in my mind I was thinking slow.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then apparently it snuck in. I never saw it go over, but apparently it snuck in the right hand upright.
And when you hit it, did you think it was over straight away?
Yeah, because that's why I always start mine sort of a metre in from that right hand upright, and they never go right. I never have a fade on it, and so I hit it, saw it, yep, happy. charged back, and then wasn't until later on that night, after we could all relax, that a few people were like, it only just went over, eh? And I was like, what do you mean? And they go, it started to go out right. So, yes. I could have been the idiot. I could have been the idiot running back and it hit the upright, and the game's still going on there.
Celebrating.
Yeah. I'd have just kept running.
But what about the rest of your game? Did you ever review that game? How did you feel you went?
No, I mean, all I remember is we had to make 1 million tackles.
Yeah,
and that's, I guess that was a cool thing. Like, it was one of those ones that you really had to earn. And anyone that knows me knows I've never really enjoyed the defensive aspect of the game. But that night you sort of did, because you just felt so secure with a bunch of dudes also that you'd spent a lot of time with and you're good mates with. So, it was the quietest Mars ever been. Usually Mars got plenty of lip for me, but he was that tired. He couldn't talk too much, but it was just literally just looking at each other.
Yeah.
And you sort of knew that got my inside covered, I've got your inside covered. And it was just one of those nights. And to do it with that sort of group and who'd, been for a bit with, it was pretty cool. But yeah, as far as the game goes, it probably wouldn't have been a great watch. But it was a nice sort of way to win it, I reckon.
And what were the celebrations like? Post World Cup success at home must have been one of the great nights.
Yeah, it was funny. Again, I remember Mick Byrne coming to me, who knew me well. He came to me probably about, because we stayed in the shed, because it's such a late game. I think it was a 9 o'clock kickoff. We stayed in the shed till, I think, 2-ish.
Oh, that's right.
We didn't get back to the hotel until 3. And I remember Mick coming to me and he goes, because he sensed that I could really enjoy this. He said, look, we're going to have a few days of this. Just savor this, and you want to take all this in. And so I mostly took that on board. And I did take it pretty easy for a long time, and then got whistled down. I think a lot of the sponsors had hired out big apartments down on the viaduct.
Yeah,
I ended up down there with Millsy, smoking cigars with him and Georgie Gregan, I think, at probably 10-ish in the morning there. And then we get a text saying, "Oh, you better we'll get back to the hotel. We've got a team meeting in the team room to get organised for these parades." And so you're walking in there thinking, "Oh, Jesus, I'm in a bed. I better sort of try and scrub myself up a bit here." And you walk in there, and there's obviously just bins and bins of the sponsors. The sponsor's finest, and a few clean polo shirts and sunglasses for everyone. So, but as it, mate, you don't really get, like with the All Blacks, obviously you go on any of your tours and you get that one day or one night somewhere where you can really let your hair down. But a lot of the best parts of that whole experience was having that 3 days where we stayed as a team, and then we went around the countryside. Where there was no next game to prepare for, or there was no chat of ice baths or recovery and that. You just really enjoyed it. And they were big nights, but it was just more being with a group that you spend so much time with, but never really had those sort of moments with. And the best night by far was coming back. We'd been down to Christchurch, and obviously that was the terrible year that Christchurch had, so there was no accommodation for us after that. And then the next day I was in Wellington, and again, we get a text saying, "Oh, come into the team room, guys. Put a bit of food on for you, blah, blah." And everyone's pretty jaded by this stage. And you walk in there, and they'd set it up like a bar. And there was DJ setups, and honestly, hands down, one of the greatest nights of my life. And I think at about 4 o'clock in the morning, we decided to go hit Wellington on a Monday night. There wasn't a whole lot going on, but it was still again just a special time. And got for another parade there. And I think when we went to head office before the parade, and I think head office made the mistake of rolling out some of Steinlager's finest too. And I don't think the boys needed much topping up. And I think a few of the staff and Chewy were thinking, what have we done here? These boys have got to go on a parade soon.
So how did your life change post that World Cup?
There was a whole lot of stuff that I guess float on the back of it, and I've got a job now that probably doesn't happen if the World Cup doesn't happen. But for me, it was more a case of getting your life back, like talked about there at the start, how, you didn't want to go into public, and, you were constantly looking at people thinking, what do you think of me? Or, like, what are you saying behind my back, sort of thing. To, not, just getting a relaxedness, if that's a word, just back in your life, and just being able to enjoy life again. And yeah, like, there's been stuff that have flowed from that, which would have never happened otherwise, which has been great. But that's just all the trimmings on top, really. For the guts of it for me, which is getting your life back, really, and getting life back from the family and that, and a big thing too, which I guess graded me a little bit, was being proud to be an All Black again.
Yeah.
For when you hear bits and pieces about I doesn't deserve to be an All Black and all the rest of it, you're like, that cuts pretty deep. So I guess being proud of being able to achieve what we did and bounce back from, I guess, the horror that was Hong Kong.
100%. And one of those trimmings you talk about was a movie about your life, mate. What sort of an input did you put on that?
I had the movie place, actually, strange enough, got McConey to come interview me for the best part of about 8 hours. And so he came and interviewed me, and he then gave them all that information. And then they obviously just went off and wrote their movie, and then sent us a few scripts, and we're like, "Oh, come on, this is too Hollywood." And they're like, "No." So at the end of the day, because people ask you how close is that? And I was like, well, the guts of it is, the outline of it is pretty much bang on, and then obviously there's all the GST sprinkled on top, pretty much. So, but yeah, I mean, it was a situation where I got rung up about when I was in Bath by Simon, my manager, and he said, "Hey, they want to do a movie about you." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said to him, "Do you reckon it'll happen?" And he goes, "Nah, probably won't, will it?" I go, "Nah." So what should I say to him? I'll say yes, but it's not going to happen. And then 2 months later, we get rung up. "Oh, yeah, that movie's happening, by the way." And it was like, "Oh."
Crazy. Were you happy with the guy who played you? Did a good job?
David, admittedly, I've only watched it once, and I watched it the day that it came. Well, David was on one, and admittedly, I might not have been. I prepared myself for it, so I was pretty dusty, and so I can't recall the whole movie. But for everyone that's watched it, who knows me, says he did a good job of taking me off. And I had a couple of nights with him, and that prior to him doing his acting and stuff. So it's good. He's a real good fella. But I guess the kids will watch it one day. But it's interesting to see you being, a feature of a movie. It's quite a bizarre situation.
Yeah, there's some crack up lookalikes in that. Some of the characters. Oh, hard case.
Well, some of them I thought were absolutely accurate, and then some of the people the actual people in real life were quite disgusted at what it looked like. I was like, "Oh, have you looked in the mirror?"
Oh, but you touched on your move to Bath and why you did it. How did you find it once you got over there?
Yeah, it's a funny one. Like, I guess for Bath, the club, the worst thing to happen was probably the World Cup final, because, like, all of a sudden, the reason I went there was no longer a reason. And I wish I was, I did bring my agent up, furiously for a couple of days after the final and said, "Come on, I'll stay. I don't need to go now. I can stay," sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he said, "No, go. I need my commission. Go." So I went, and Bath's a great city, but they were a club at the time who, I think they were trying to find themselves. Like, they got a billionaire owner who was more worried probably about, he bought this estate and decided that that's where they're going to be based. Yeah. And that's great, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that is more important than this. And it was just a bit showy. One of the worst things that happened to me is my first week up there was European Cup games, and I was excited because I was like, well, I signed with Bath over a couple of other teams because they were in Europe, and I thought, well, I'd get bored out of my brain just playing premiership rugby week in, week out, but they're in Europe, so that looks cool. Went up there, and the foreign boys got a hold of me on Tuesday and said, and because my partner didn't come up, or partner at that time didn't come up until months after, and they said, "Oh, we'll take you out for a feed." I was like, "Oh, yeah, sweet." And they took me out, and all of a sudden I realised this feed was not going to be just a bit of sushi and home pretty quickly. So we went out and had about a 4 or 5 o'clocker on the Tuesday leading into Montpellier in the European Cup. And I woke up and I was, right, wasn't there a sauna? I was in a frenzy. I was thinking, what sort of preparation is this? We went out, we beat Montpellier, and I get man of the match. And I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe I can enjoy myself over here and still play half decent footy. And because of the South African boys, we were like, oh, well, I guess we repeat the dose this week, do we? So we went out, did the same, lost. Oh, well, we'll try it again. Went out, did the same, no work. So I guess I got into a real false sense of what it was going to be like. But, no, I mean, I probably, like at the time, I think, because I guess I ticked, not from a playing point of view, but preparation-wise, I knew that I wasn't the most gifted in New Zealand, so I had to train harder and do all the stuff to get to where I got to there. I sort of guess I got up there and with no dream of being an All Black again because I was in Bath, I guess I just almost relaxed and thought, you know what, you deserve time to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for Bath, they still were paying me to play good rugby, and yet I was cruising, to be fair. And then a few things happened around the club which didn't help my attitude towards it all, But it's quite almost like, because in Bath, the rugby team is the only team. There's no big soccer team. It is a rugby city, which is quite unique for England. There was local tabloid stuff and stuff like that, which I was like. And so I was waking up one morning to be told that, apparently it's all through the media that you're on your last warning. They're going to cut your contract and all this sort of stuff.
Oh,
and it's got quotes from like the CEO and stuff in there. And I was straight away, I was like to Agent, tell them I want to see him this afternoon. And it just never fronted and stuff like that. And just spiraled a bit as far as that relationship goes. And then the following year they changed coaches, and I thought that was going to be a bit different. And I really knuckled down in the pre-season and tried to get really prepared well. And then the new coaches, who was a good fella to socialise with, but he's South African, and all he wanted us to do was kick until we got to the opposition 20.
Yeah. And
I'm like, oh, geez, what's the point of me being here? Because I've never been accused of being a great kicking team. So, it became a bit of a mess by the end of it. And I had another year to run on my contract, but I had an option. And in the end, I was happy to get out. I regret, there's a lot of things there I regret my time about, but there's also things that were coming from the club that were just not the environment you wanted to be a part of, So it would have been nice to have had my time again there, but it was what it was. It was a good eye-opener for me, and in so many regards, like I realised that you do have to prepare every week, your life depends on it, as opposed to, I'm up here now, I can sort of cruise a bit.
Yeah.
Because you got found out pretty quickly. It didn't help that I went from about a 97 kg 5'8" to about 107 kg 5'8", but that wasn't a great conditioning aspect of mine.
Those Tuesday nights will do it.
Tuesday nights and too many pies. There's a wonderful diet up there if you allow it to be. We had a full-time chef at the training base, as I say. Like, obviously, there was every trimmings. And we got breakfast, lunch, and sometimes an afternoon tea. But an afternoon tea would essentially be a 3-course meal, roast, the works. And I love the food, so I was thinking, this is heaven. And I've never had a cooked breakfast in my life on a training day in New Zealand. And yet here I am with bacon, eggs, sausages. And I'm just thinking, this is what it's about, guys. So, yeah, needless to say, I quickly went high up into those early 100s.
Well, that's good stuff. But you obviously sacrificed a fair bit of money to return back to New Zealand, but no regrets doing that. You had a hell of a time, like you've already sort of spoke about, coming back, playing for Waikato, winning the Ranfurly Shield, a few things that must stand out for you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was funny. I just woke up one day and I go, right, I'm done. I want to go back to New Zealand. I had plenty of people telling me, don't come because, you know, like obviously left on a good moment, and you know, a lot of my close people and people I respect were like, don't come back. You can only go down from here. But I was like, well, you know what? Like, if I come back and I'm a mess, then so be it, you know. I'd rather come back and have a crack, because at the time I was sort of 30-ish, early 30s, and I was like, well, you know, it's too early to retire, but it's also, you know, not too late to, if you've got any regrets, you know, that you want to achieve or anything like that, then come back and roll the dice. And I guess I didn't have any, when I made the decision, I didn't have any correspondence with the Chiefs. So I just said to Waikato, we got in touch with Waikato, and they said, oh, look, there's only a minimum deal there, it's 17,000, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, that's fine. We'll pick that up and just go from there. And then a couple of days later, got a message from my agent saying, oh, Renz is keen to meet you. And I was like, well, I'm actually halfway to Coromandel, but when does he want to meet me? And they go, oh, in about an hour's time. So I had me and my old man going for a fish over in the Coromandel, and I was just like, Dad, we just got to turn around here. And so just turned around, and the 3-hour round trip back to Hamilton. Went and had a beer with Renz, and Renz said, I remember saying, like, why do you want to be a chief again? I said, well, you guys seem to know how to win them, and I'll be pretty keen on winning one. And he's like, yep, okay, you make it happen from your end, I'll make it happen from this end. And we shook the hands, had a couple more beers, and I was back on my way to Coromandel to go fishing.
Easy as that. Well, you didn't quite win one, did you? But you got pretty close.
Yeah, a couple of semi-finals, and at the end of the day, like, I don't, you know, like, would have been nice to have won one, but at least I was part of an outfit that gave it a red hot crack. And you know, there's a couple of games we probably let slip during the season, which, you know, at that time, home advantage during the finals was almost the gate to winning it, you know. So, but yeah, as I say, certainly can leave that aspect with absolutely no regrets at all.
But you did win the Shield, and we've heard Damien on already, who spoke about and Brad Weber, I think they were both in your side at the time, and spoke about the after party at your house. One of the great dudes.
Yeah, I mean, it might have been for them. I was still patching up the aftermath of it for months after, but I'm sure they had a great couple of days.
What was it like playing with all those young guys who were coming through? You come back, more experienced guy, just won the Rugby World Cup a few years earlier. All of them would have looked up to you. What was it like? What's the relationship like?
Yeah, well, they didn't look up to me for long. They quickly started ripping me to pieces. But like, as I say, it was, you know, rugby's special sort of environments, because you can quickly forget that you're 30 and they're 19 and 20, and all of a sudden you think that you're the same age. But it was great coming back with that group. Obviously, since then, I've formed relationships with the guys you've mentioned, and that, like, that are more than rugby and that now. So, you know, like, it's bizarre, because at the time when you're a 30-year-old, you think about your average 20-year-old and you're thinking, well, I'm probably not going to be mates with a 20-year-old. But that's just the way it turned out with the rugby boys. And yeah, it's obviously pretty like-minded people, apart from Damien, who's obviously a lot more serious than most. But the rest of them very relaxed individuals, and as I say, great to be part of it. And not just them, but like to come back and play in the Chiefs that contained a Brodie Retallick, for example. You know, you end up play with the big Guz, and you know, like, he'll go down as one of the all-time greats. So pretty cool to play with him and stuff like that. So it was pretty special to come back and be a part of that crew.
And one guy who did look up to you, I know for sure, was Tim O'Malley. And I do want to hear the story about when he asked you for a photo at halftime running up the tunnel. Surely this is a yarn.
No, it's not actually, and I was surprised he did, because it's that last year I played EPC with Counties, and we had a wretched year, but we were just before half time. They got us back in the game, and I'm not sure it was Tim or someone else was playing in the midfield that day for an intercept. And I think Timmy Nana and I plucked it out, and we scored under the post. And because I had a relationship with Finlay, So I turn and just start feeding it to Finley, saying, "What are you doing, Red? What are you making that sort of call on half time for? You're just giving us the game back." And I'm just feeding it to him. And I'm not sure if poor Timmy got an earful of that too, or who I was giving it to. But halfway up the tunnel, the great man asked me for a photo after the game. So, yeah. And then obviously became good mates in Japan as Green Rockets teammates. But no, it is a true story. It's never happened before. I thought, what a lovely gentleman. I certainly stopped sledging him after that.
Oh, that cracks me up so much. I love it. And then your teammates the following year over in Japan. So why did you go to Japan? Was that just a top up?
Yeah, I mean, there's no hiding from the fact that it's a good spot to make money. No, I after Bath, pulling into Japan was good. You know, like it got, I guess, the love of the rugby back. And it's like you paid obviously more money than you've ever seen, but then you've got guys who just appreciate the game for what it is, and they forget about the money and all of that and the professionalism, and you go out and do your bit for the company in the weekend, and then they just happy to have you there, and win or lose, you make sure you have a good time after the game with the boys, and it's just a refreshing place. Obviously, certainly no one asks you. The Japanese man in Shinjuku doesn't know a thing about Hong Kong, so you can walk around pretty anonymous there, and it's just a great place to go, and like there's challenges there. Obviously, your downtime can sometimes you get too much of it at times over there. I sort of Damien the other night, and I said, he's like, I said, you want to be training more often, don't you? He goes, yeah, you're right. Like you literally get you get too much downtime to be stuck in your apartment, but. I mean, I couldn't talk about it highly enough. Just from a rugby point of view, it's not over-coached and over-structured. There's still an aspect of you still at school playing footy, but that enjoyment factor. And I remember first couple of games up there when I put in what I thought was a beautiful raking wipers kick. And your wingers would look at you thinking, well, who's chasing that? Because I'm not, And I'm like, I found grass, we can catch them in the corner, but no, not interested.
Kick pressure.
There's no kick pressure. So no, it's that I enjoyed. It was literally 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock game. Go out, throw the ball around, go hard, and then the boys will have a social party. As you know, a social. Yeah. They call it a social. Every weekend there'll be another reason to have a social, and we'll have booked out some all you can drink and all you can eat place for 2 hours, and then it'll be clap your hands and see you on Monday sort of thing. It's just a wonderful, wonderful way to live life. Those boys.
Yeah, and you must have spent some time at karaoke over there, especially after your masked singer appearance. I'd never seen this before till last night. Someone sent the question in and I looked it up and I couldn't believe it. How did you get roped into that one?
I'm surprised you're still interviewing me after all the respect would have gone. Look, as I say, it was a long time between paychecks, and when the masked singer came knocking, I had to answer. Anyone that's been in the karaoke booth with me in Tokyo would have told you he should be nowhere near a singing show, that's for sure. But as I say, it was a long time between paychecks, so I had to do it.
What were the nerves like before going on that? That must have been right up there.
I thought nothing of it. And because you did all of it, well, until a point. I did all the pre-recording and all the rest of it and the voice stuff and did all that. And then on filming day, you're locked in a room, and then they bring you out, and you're standing there in a 6 foot, well, it's about an 8 foot tall mower costume, and you're thinking to yourself, what have I signed up for here? You're thinking, how much are they paying me for this? Was it enough? And then, all along, I'd been told, because I said, look, I don't dance, so I'm not going to dance on stage. They're like, yeah, no, it's no problem. You'll have backup dancers. It'll be fine. So I was okay, sweet as. I'll go stand out there for a minute and a half and just go put up with it. Then all of a sudden on filming day, they say, oh, no, hasn't anyone told you? You don't have backup dancers. You're going to have to move around. I was like, oh. And that's when the sweat was just dripping. And then I was roped off after it. And then I sort of tried to forget about it, tried to get on with life. And then obviously months after, the show's coming out. And you're just like, where can I hide? Where can I bury myself for a couple of days while this blows over?
Well, I suppose you're so used to copying criticism that this was nothing.
Well, I did wonder after it, why did I put myself into the firing line again? Look, I mean, people who took it seriously were probably a bit offended that I'd be on a singing show, but people who saw it for what it was probably,
Oh, so good. So funny.
There's a clown trying to put bread on his table for his young family,
Oh, so how did the retirement from rugby come about? Was that your own call? Was it injuries?
No, I mean, yeah, the body in that last year in Japan was starting to creak, and was starting to do things like calves, which are old men's injuries. So,
yeah.
But in the end, I just came back. Obviously, when COVID hit over there, and we all jumped on that emergency plane out of Narita, and I didn't really make a hard call about it. Talked to my agent about it and said, look, if something pops up that's bloody good, then I'm all go. So I kept training for, I guess, during lockdown and that, when there wasn't a whole lot to do for that time. So I kept training. Didn't play NBC obviously, and just trained and just sort of stayed. And then a couple did come through, but not ones that sort of made you want to get to the airport and go and do it all again, So in the end, sort of just drifted off, and then that's when I guess a few of the things like this job came up and other things came up. So, and Masked Singer came up, so that tied me over for another month or two. So I didn't really, I didn't think I warranted doing a big announcement as far as I retired from rugby. I didn't need to call a press conference, so I just drifted off really. Obviously there was chatting around that American stuff and all that sort of stuff, but to uproot the family would have for not huge wedge these days. It would have been a bit probably selfish from me. So we parked up at home and starting to build our little life there. So yeah, I'm pretty content with how it all unfolded. I mean, it wasn't great finishing on the COVID season. But, yeah.
So you're definitely done though? Is this your announcement, Vic?
No one's wanted it, mate. So you can have it.
Here we go. Stephen Donald retires from rugby officially.
No, well, I've actually been in talks with the local club team, so they're putting a contract proposal to me right now. So we'll see what comes of it. It'll be about 2-3 handles a Saturday, so it'll be tough to figure out.
Yeah, what's the thing you miss most about rugby? Is it that side of it?
That side of it, being a part of a team and the rest of it. But I have noticed in the year or two since I've been out of it that competitive aspect on a Friday night, going to bed knowing that I'm about to have a shit sleep because I'm nervous about what's gonna have unfold tomorrow. The competitiveness, I don't think you lose that, and that's what I still miss and crave, and every now and again watch TV and see people like Kahui stealing a living at the Force and think, well, maybe I could do it too, So, but yeah, that and being part of a team, and those times you have after a good win or whatever,
Oh, one of the greats, absolutely. Well, as always, we've gone to Instagram for some questions. That is one of the greatest journeys ever, but plenty of questions came through. I've chosen the best 10. Most of the questions came in were around your nuts. So Victor obviously mentioned that he mentioned that you had big nuts, and I didn't think much of it. I thought it was just that
because is this an R18 podcast or what?
I thought it was just because you were ice cold when you kicked that penalty, but there must be more to it because Kirsty mentioned it too when I came on. So no, she asked about it.
No, I can assure you. I don't know what Victor was going on about there, and I was quite offended by him, to be fair. No, I've just got no answer. I really have. And was that what all the 10 questions were about?
Most of them. So massive nuts or.
Let me guess. Are there some pretty high-profile followers of yours that text these messages in, or?
Oh, there's a few probably seen you in the shower.
Yeah, I can imagine a few think this is hilarious.
Okay, the other one was, how do you get the nickname Beaver? This one came in a bit.
No, just I, as a kid, had two front teeth for probably longer than a kid should have. There were no supporting aspects. And one of my good mates thought I looked like a beaver, and it's obviously not the most easy on the eye child, and haven't grown into the most easy on the eye adult, but he was just cruel, and unfortunately it stuck, and beaver just followed me everywhere.
Oh, that's crazy. I didn't know it came back from that long ago.
Yeah. I know everyone anticipates a lot better story than that, but no.
Like that. Okay, next one. Did Jimmy Cowan actually stick up for you like he did in the movie?
Of course he did. Anyone knows Jimmy knows you want him in your corner in any situation. So no, Jimmy's a wonderful man, but he is there when you need him most. That's for sure.
No doubt. Okay, how hairy are you really?
Quite an interesting question, that. It blows a lot of people's minds that from the knees and the elbows down, very hairy, and then pretty poor elsewhere.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
True.
Like,
no chest hair.
No, it's like sprinkles.
Oh, yeah. I would imagine you having a big bush under there.
I know. It's obviously hairy neck, hairy arms from elbow down, and hairy legs from your shin down. But yeah, I don't know what it says about. It's no good for massage calves, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Good for the quads, though.
Great for the quads. A lot of heavy massages.
Okay, next one. Best team piss up. There would have been a few.
Oh, Jesus. Just really having to dive deep now.
Sort of mentioned that All Black one, didn't you? That one.
Yeah, the All Black one in Wellington. Before the parade was probably the best All Black one. Best Chiefs one. It was a controversial one and got a few people in trouble, but the flight, probably from the moment we walked off Loftus to the moment about Thursday back in Hamilton after that 2009 final, it's fair to say the boys didn't prepare themselves to go into a business class flight on the way home. And I don't think business class was prepared for the Chiefs to come into that flight after losing to Loftus by 50. A few guys never got more contracts after that. It was quite a controversial trip home. A few medical people got, a few of the sleeping pills got put in the wrong people's drinks, and there was some repercussions from that. It was all the same. It was good. It turned into an impromptu costume one too, because we'd gone to the police second store in Pretoria during that week. You know what it's like trying to fill in a week in Pretoria, not easy. So we went shopping and got all this army kit from their store, and Cucks had a gas mask. I had the full armed defender's outfit with the vest and the works, and we decided that after that loss, why not get into it? So yeah, that was probably the best Chiefs piss up, and Waikato piss ups were
every week.
There were some good away trips.
Oh, good stuff. Okay, next one. Favorite player to watch?
Favorite player to watch? Probably Jeff Wilson when I was growing up. It was just silky, just an array of skills, the chip and chase.
Yeah,
it was pretty special to watch in his prime.
Goldie, one of the greats. Okay, next one. The Swish question. Shout out to the new major sponsor. But if you could get a video call from anyone in the world, who would it be?
Pete Sampras, actually.
Legend.
Going to my tennis days, and another man that's very hairy, probably from the elbow down.
Yeah, look-alike, kind of.
Yeah, possibly, but he'd be up there.
Have you had that before? Pete Sampras lookalike? Sure.
No. Oh, no, sure I have had it, yes. Yeah. Guilty.
Okay.
I was hoping for Brad Pitt lookalike, but no.
Okay, 2 more. Advice to deal with public criticism.
I just thought I learned after it all that, you are who you are and you're not who that person says you are. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, you just got to be, and it's corny as hell, but it's just like being true to you, like being you, really. Yeah. You've just got to somehow just block it. Like a lot of boys go through it and complain about it, like easiest thing would be to ignore social media, but it's such a part of everyone's lives these days that it'd be tough for them, tough for that younger generation too. But the other part of it is just be you, like you're not necessarily Damien McKenzie, a rugby player. You're Damien McKenzie, and like as an example, don't your identity is not based on who you are as a rugby player or what have you. You just got to be you, the person, and if people have an issue with that, then that's fine. But you know who you are. So I just big on just block it out and just ignore it because they don't know you.
Yeah. Geez, I like that. From the man who's got probably the most. Last question. Beaver's best piece of advice. This will be good.
I need to come up with something good, but I'm just coming up empty. It feels like the right thing to do it.
Oh, short, sharp, to the point. I love that. I knew you'd come up trumps. Oh, one of the great ways to finish. One of the great podcasts, mate. Really appreciate you giving up your time. I know you're flat out at the moment with all your jobs, and really appreciate you coming on here for almost an hour and a half with one of the greatest yarns we've ever had, mate. Really appreciate you coming on and going through your journey.
Thanks for having me, mate. I feel honoured. You've had an array of superstars on here, so it's great to join them.
Mate, one of the greats. Appreciate it.
Cheers, mate.